It's the traditional 2 minutes past 8. Are we ready, Julio? Fine. Ladies and gentlemen, assembled company, welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe. And tonight we are in conjunction and cooperation, and whatever way you want to put it, with Get a Word in Edgeways. And our MC for tonight is none other than Mike Rust himself. Over to you, Mike. Take away.
Well, thank you very much for that great build-up, John. It was very nice. So the idea, for those of you who haven't seen it already and everything else, is to have a story round on the basis that we ran our storytelling club, which was called Tales at the Edge in Bridgnorth for the last 30 years. So as much as I'm going to kick off with a short story, the idea is for you to come and tell us stories, then we can nick them and tell them to everybody else. But it's a place where it's good to practice new stories. It's a place to meet other storytellers and have a chat about things. And so the idea will be, as we go forward, to finish the Zoom meeting and then leave the Zoom meeting open for a few minutes so we can get to talk to each other. And maybe once a year, if I can persuade you, and with Kath as well, who helps me out as part of the team at Get a Word in Edgeways, is to persuade you to come and sit in a field in Shropshire and listen to stories. So I'm going to start off with an old story, and then I'm going to go to Kath, and I'm going to go to John, and then I'm going to go to David, and then I'm going to make it up as I go around. But I will try
possibly Zuha.
And Zuha as well. Yes, absolutely. But I'll go for those four first. Now, a long time ago, down on where the River Severn and the River Avon meet, which is now a place called Tewkesbury. There's been an old abbey there, and it's been there for such a long time that the Anglos and the Saxons built it originally. And they built an abbey there, and if you come up the River Severn on the river, the first thing you see of Tewkesbury is the great big tower of the abbey. And there was a rickety little wooden bridge. And it was forever falling down, and there was forever bits falling off of it, because the Saxons, they were wonderful people, but builders they weren't particularly. And building bridges, they only built them out of wood. And we all know today when the River Avon goes up and the River Severn goes up and they all meet, there's water all over the place. And that's exactly what was happening then in all those days. So there was a king. And the king went to his privy council, and they're all moaning and groaning at him about they were having to pay a toll on a rickety bridge, and then they weren't going to pay any money. And it was just as if it was dangerous. Their wives didn't like it at all. The women were getting really iffy about walking over this bridges. So were the horses and everything else. But it was the women who were being particularly vocal about it. So he went down there and he said, look, we're going to have to build a new bridge from scratch. So I'll go up the River Avon a bit, because if you're going to cut wood down for a bridge, you always go upstream and float the wood downstream. You don't go downstream and try to pull the wood upstream. It's too much like hard work. So he went up the River Avon, and there, just the other side of Breedon, the village of Breedon, there's a hill called Breedon. And there was a grove. And there was a grove of Willie and Sally trees. And he said, that'll do for a start. He said, cut all that down, float it down the river. Then he went along a bit and he found some beech, and she found some hornbeam, and he found some ash, and he found some oak, and he found all sorts of stuff. But it was that grove of Sally and Willie that sort of somehow struck him in the back of the head. As he walked past it, as he was going back to the river to float down the river to go back to Tewkesbury, he couldn't get it off his mind. And that night, he went to bed. Now, it's a strange thing I'm saying now, because this was before 1066, but it was in time of Edward the Confessor. So it was quite a spiritual time in our country. As he went to bed, it seemed to him the trees were talking to him. And he thought, this is daft, trees don't talk to people. And he listened to what this grove said, and the grove said, if you're going to cut us all down, that's not how it works. We work with you and we work alongside you, and we're part of your community. In the springtime, we have flowers underneath us. We have the leaves of our trees. The bees and everything live with us and all, and we're part of nature and part of the community. We don't mind you coming along a little bit at a time. and saying you can have this for baskets and log baskets, or you can make coracles, and you can do all these with our bits and pieces, but just leave enough of us, about 90%, so we can regenerate ourselves. And that's fine, that's working in partnership. But cutting everything down in one go, that's too harsh and it's too brutal. And he went, that's the weirdest dream I've got. What I'm going to do is to start counting sheep jumping over a gate. So he went to bed, and now we've all done this. He started counting sheep as he jumped over the gate. 1, 2, the third one turned into a white dragon. Then the fourth one didn't go anywhere at all. And the fifth one, they all sat down, they all started just staring at him. Well, you try to go to sleep if there's 3 white dragons staring at you. You know, so he got up and he had a cup of tea and he went back to bed, and he didn't get any sleep that night at all. And in the morning, he was testy, bad-tempered and grumpy. Well, Mrs. King, well, she'd been married to him for a long time, so she was used to him. So what's the matter with you? And he went, I can't do this, she said. I'm having a dream. It's like trees are talking to me. I must be going mad. And she went, well, sometimes you might be, and sometimes you'll not be. Tell me what's happened there. And so he sat down there, because Mrs. King was his companion and his friend. And he had privy councillors, and he had monks, and he had bishops, and he had professors, and he had clever people all over. But his main companion was Mrs. King. And she shook her head and said, well, let's see what happens tonight. So the day passed, but he did say to the people, don't touch that grove just for today. Go and find some other wood for the new bridge. So they started going up the river, but they went past the grove, but that night it all happened again. He couldn't get to sleep. There were sheep turning into white dragons, and it was as if these trees, this little grove of the Withy and the Sally, that he wanted to make the decking of the new bridge, were talking to him and saying, it's too harsh to cut us all down at once. Now, in this part of Worcestershire, and the river goes down past the Forest of Dean, and it's well known that there's gaps where this world meets the next world. And he went up to that grove and he sat down in the middle of it. And it was as if something had come, or somebody had come to speak to him. And that person was probably Godda. Now, Godda was Wild Edric's wife later on, in a few years later on, but the fairies, they have a different time to us. And Godda, she wasn't like, Princess Royal or anything like that, but she was a fairy princess, and she would have known folk. She would have had tea and cakes with various other people, various other spirits, and various people that looked after the river and what grew alongside it. And suddenly it seemed to him there was her who was telling him not to do this. So he went back that evening and he sat down, and again he told his wife exactly what had happened. And she said, listen, she said, don't build that bridge, or don't use that wood to build that bridge. And he said, well, how can I say that now? Everybody will think I've done a U-turn. Everything I just changed the plan Henry, they'll call me. Everybody, I can't do that. She said, yes, you can. She said, listen, you don't have to build a bridge out of wood. Build a stone one. Tell everybody that we're rich enough in our land to build stone bridges and not wooden bridges. And he went, wow. And she also said, listen to me, she said, get the monks from the abbey to build the bridge, and you won't have to pay them. It'd be cheaper as well. Because the monks, they don't do wood, they only do stone. Go and have a look at the abbey. There's nothing there in wood, it's all stone. Wow. He thought, what a good idea. So he went off and he met the abbot, and the abbot wasn't very happy because he was going to supply all the labour. But the king told him he had to. So they built the bridge. But the abbot, he was absolutely certain that he wasn't going to be calling it anything to do with any of the old spirits. And it wasn't anything to do with talking to trees or anything like that. So he named it St. John's Bridge. And it's still there to this day. And by the end of St. John's Bridge, John Row, there's an old pub. It's the oldest one in Gloucestershire. It's called the Black Bear. And it sits there to this day. And they built that bridge so well, the floods couldn't touch it. But somehow it was either St. John But I like to think there was an older spirits in there. And the older spirits were just looking after that bridge because it was their grove of willow that lived by the River Avon, that I know where it is. And that's a little story about an old bridge in Gloucestershire.
Well,
Right.
and the Black Bear does feel like it's got those spirits in.
It's a lovely place. We'll sit and have a beer in there one night. You're all invited to meet me in the Black Bear. I've been going there since a teenager, and we don't tell my wife, but there was a gorgeous barmaid in there in about 1973. Right. So we said we're going to Cath next. So I'm going to mute myself, and on we go around the room, which is how we do it.
Rightio, thank you very much, Mike. Well, that's quite a coincidence because I was thinking about telling a story about building something out of wood as well. And there might be a disturbance in a minute because the ice cream van has just pulled up outside my house. Anyhow, I'll carry on and you'll just have to ignore the chimes in the distance. This is a noodlehead story, a story about a fool. This is a story about old Tommy. And old Tommy had a small farm. And this particular day, he was in his farmhouse. He was in the kitchen and he had spread out on his old oak table. He had a piece of cardboard. And it was just a rough old piece of card that he'd torn from the side of a box, but he wanted to draw something. So he pulled open the long drawer that was in the table and he rummaged around in it, and just at the back he found a little stub of pencil, you know, one of those flat ones like carpenters use, but it was the only pencil he had, and so that's what he used. And he began to draw, and bearing in mind that he spent his life farming, working on the land, and he did hardly any writing, certainly not much drawing. Actually, if you saw it, you'd say it wasn't a bad drawing. You could see what it was. It was a kind of a building, and there was a roof, quite a wide roof, and there were uprights holding the roof up. And Tommy really, you know, with a bit of an eye for proportion, he was thinking he would have liked to have had the uprights a bit longer. But, well, he contented himself with the thought that Rome wasn't built in a day, and nor was it built with unavailable materials. So, you know, he was going to use what he knew he had to hand. And with his plan in mind, he set out to the woods. Now, these woods, they were not his woods. They were the woods on the neighbouring land, and the neighbouring land belonged to the squire. So he trod carefully and he trod quietly, and as he went through the woods, he saw here and there branches that looked as though they would do the job for him, and he didn't cut them down. He marked them up as he went along, and all he did, he just tied a bit of ivy around the bottom of the branch, and if you'd been walking through the woods you wouldn't even have noticed it. But because old Tommy knew they were there, he knew he could find them later on. Well, he went back home and he made himself a cup of tea and he got a bit of bread, and he went out to the duck pond. And he sat down on his favourite stone by the pond. And you wouldn't even need to be told it was his favourite stone, because you could see the top of it was worn smooth and the top of it was worn clean by the constant application of the seat of his trousers. And as he sat there with his pipe, with his bit of bread, the ducks came and clustered round his feet, and he shared that bread with them. He just sprinkled a bit on the ground for the ducks to eat. Then when it started to get dark, and when old Tommy judged it was late enough for the squire's gamekeeper to have gone to the village inn, he went and got his saw out of the shed, and he went back out to the woods. And he found all those branches that he'd marked earlier, and he cut them down, and one by one he dragged them back to his farm. Now, he'd chosen them carefully. They needed to be long enough to span the roof of his building. They needed to be thick enough, strong enough, so that they could bear that long span without bending. But they also needed to be slender enough that he could drag them back home on his own. And when he'd got all his roof beams, he then cut off all the side branches, so he had more or less straight beams. Well, by this time it was time for him to go to bed, but the next morning he was ready again to take on the next stage of his project. Well, it just so happened that the squire was having a new fence built between his own land and Tommy's land. Goodness knows why he would want to keep Tommy out of his land, but that's what he did. And the contractors who were making the fence, well, they hadn't done it yet, so there were piles of fence poles at intervals along the border between the squire's land and Tommy's land. Well, of course, you don't take them all from one pile, do you? You take maybe one from this pile and two from this pile, and maybe if there's a bigger pile over there, you might take three from that. And so Tommy did. He borrowed fence posts from all the piles until he had enough. Then he started to place the fence posts all the way around his duck pond until he had, it was, well, like kind of a fence, but at least the uprights of a fence all the way around the pond. And then he went and got those little branches that he'd cut off the side of the main branches, and he started to join those crossways between the fence poles. Sometimes he knocked them in with nails that he happened to have lying around, but he didn't have too many of those. So other than that, he just tied them on with a bit of woodbine, a bit of honeysuckle, until it did look like a perfectly decent fence. And it was, fair enough, it was quite sturdy. Then, well, he needed to put the rafters across, didn't he? And that took a bit of manoeuvring, that took a bit of balancing, that took a bit of strength as he held the beams upright and then tipped them over so they fell in exactly the right place. And again, he used the woodbine to bind them in place until he had his roof. Well, that was that day's work. And the next morning he got up bright and early, quite keen to finish this job. And he went off to the squire's lake. And all around the squire's lake there were reeds and there were rushes. And again he cut a few from here, a few from there, not too many from any one place so it wouldn't show. And when he got all his reeds and rushes back, he, with some trepidation, he started to crawl along that roof that he'd made and fix the reeds and rushes in place until he had a kind of a makeshift thatch along the top. And then he looked at that stone he liked to sit on, and he went and got some of the spare branches, and he made a little extension to the roof, and he thatched that as well, so that the stone that he liked to sit on, so that was covered too. And then, well, the roof over his duck pond, that was it, about done. And it was time for his tea now, so, well, you know, after all those days of hard work, he didn't have much energy to cook himself a meal, so he just got a plate and he put on some bread and a bit of cheese and put a couple of apples in his pocket that he'd borrowed out of the squire's orchard. And he went back to the pond and he sat down on his favourite stone. And this was after the sun had set, so the light was fading very quickly from the sky. But the ducks came and they clustered round his feet. And if we could see Tommy there with his bread and his cheese and lighting his pipe, you might hear the gentle patter of rain on that roof that was a last-minute addition over his favourite stone. And we might hear the chuntering of the ducks at his feet. And we might just see the glow of his pipe as he sits there in the gathering darkness. And that's not much of a story, really, is it? Not much happens. But that story is told to show Tommy up as a fool. That story is told to show you how stupid Tommy is. But, well, is he?
Well done, Kath. It works for me anyway, mate. Good evening, Jodie. Nice to see you here. Right. So I've got a batting order worked out. So it's been me, Kath, John, and then it's going to go to David, and then we'll come to you afterwards. Okay. Right, John.
Well, while we're on Falls and Woods, I thought I'd carry on with the theme. And it's really for those of us that came, you know, at school were told we were useless, and we kind of now whether we contradicted them towards the end of our lives, I don't know. But anyway, this is about Peter. Now, Peter, he was the youngest of three brothers, and they lived in the middle of the forest with their father. They were charcoal burners. Well, I say they. In fact, Dad and the two other brothers were charcoal burners, and Peter had never quite got his head round it. So whatever he did, he got wrong. So they just left it to it. But it was a really cold winter, and there was this huge demand for charcoal. So Dad turned around to the three brothers and said, look, you're all going to have to go out. And Peter said, well, how do I do it? And Dad said, look, have you been living up in the stars all these years? No. Look, here's a sack. Here's an axe. Go and get some charcoal. Peter's looking at it. Sack, axe. Hasn't the faintest idea what to do. But he goes out in the woods and he wanders about all day and he thinks, well, how does this happen? I probably need to get some wood. But end of the day, he hadn't got anything. And he's wandering back and he really can't. He's not looking forward to just be everyone making fun of him again. When he sees an old tree, an old rotting oak tree with a hollow in it. And he takes his axe and he gives it a whack. When he hears a sound from inside. And he raises his axe. And he's about to hit it again when a voice comes out and says, you better not do that again, or you better look out. I'd better look out for what? Says Peter, who takes everything absolutely literally. And who are you? Well, I'm a little devil, says the voice from inside, and I've been kicked out of hell for breaking the rules of hell. And I've got to live in this tree for 7 years, 7 days. 7 months and 7 days. And if you cut this tree, and if I don't, I'll never be allowed back. But if you cut this tree down, I'd have failed. Now, you can't cut this tree down. Well, Peter turns around and says, well, but I just need a bit of wood. Well, his devil realizes that he's not going to scare him. He said, well, what can I do for you? He said, well, I'll show you where there's some really good wood. He said, well, what I'd really like is a bit of charcoal. So Peter throws the sack inside, and the devil fills out with charcoal. Peter goes back, got this huge sack of charcoal. And he's back at his place, and they're looking at how did you do that? And then they looked inside the charcoal. It wasn't ordinary charcoal, but it was half gold. It was charcoal on one side and gold on the other. And they were the richest charcoal burners in the region. I mean, Peter and everyone had their own houses apart from Peter, and they all took wives apart from Peter, and he just sat there, and Dad says, look, you've got to go and take a wife. Well, why would I want a wife? You look after me. He said, look, it's time you went and got married, got a house. Well, I'm not going to marry anyone else but a princess. You better go to the king and tell him I'm going to marry a princess. Peter says, look, you just, it doesn't work. As Dad says, look, it don't work like that. If I go to the palace and I tell the Dad that, they're going to set the dogs on me. They're going to rip me to pieces, and they're going to Well, I don't care, said Peter. But don't you worry. And he goes back to the tree and he gets his axe and he's back there. What do you want now? Said the devil. Well, he said, I want something that I can pour on myself, and I can't be touched, and I can't be cut, and I can't be burnt. Aren't you ever satisfied? He said, throw me a bottle. And I ain't got a bottle. You're the devil. You can do what you like. Make me a bottle. Okay. Devil's losing patience, but he makes him a bottle, and he said, I'm going to throw it out. No, put your hand in, and I'll give it to you. And Peter thinks, no, you remember, don't compromise with the devil. He says, no, you throw it out here. Well, you better catch it. You won't get another one. You'll get as many as I tell you, says Peter. Well, he caught the first one. He went back to Dad and he rubbed it all over Dad's body. He said, now go and tell the king I want his daughter. Well, the whole village is really upset with Peter. Dad is going to get ripped to pieces. But Dad gets there and they set the dogs on him first. No effect. Then they get a 7-pound cannon and they fire that at him. Has no effect. And the king thinks there's really powerful magic going on here. I better listen to him. And he said, well, you send your boy to me and we'll make an arrangement. Dad goes back and tells Peter, and Peter says, no. He said, I'm not going to see him. You just arrange the marriage and I'll be there. Well, Peter goes there and he's got, Dad goes there. And this time they set the dogs, a 14-pound cannon, nothing touches it. Well, the king said, I better do exactly what he said. Well, the old Peter goes back and he goes back to the devil and he says, I've got to, I'm a bit raggedy, and I'm covered in charcoal, and well, I can't go and get married like this. I'll tell you what, you give me something, and whatever I think about, I'll get it. Well, the devil's only got a few more days to go, and his 7 years and 7 months and 7 days are up. So he says, okay, climb to the top of this tree. There's a golden acorn there. When you want something, just pop it in your mouth. You can have whatever you want. Sure enough, at the top of the tree, there's the golden acorn. Peter pops in his top pocket. Well, off they go to get married. And Dad has said, look, you're going to upset the village. We want all the, me and your mum and all the villagers will need to come. And they were a raggedy bunch. And this whole raggedy band turns up at the castle, at the palace gates. And the king lets them in. And when the princess saw Peter, he is raggedy and he's dirty and he's covered in charcoal, and she faints. But she hasn't got much of a choice, and she just and apart from that, there's this big magic going on. So she's about to get married, and she's looking down, and all that raggedy bunch are in there. They're picking cherries off the cherry tree in there, and Peter is at the altar, and he pops that acorn into his mouth, and instantly he's so handsome, and he's got this beautiful velvet suit and fantastic boots, and out in the yard, everyone has got fantastic clothes, and those old wooden tables are covered in tablecloth, and there's silver, and there's pheasant for dinner. Well, inside the palace, the king's guests are getting a bit upset. All those people outside, that raggedy bunch, have got pheasant. We've just got chicken. They left. And so Peter turns to his wife and says, well, we'd better go out and join those others in the yard. And, and there's singing and there's dancing. And he says, that it's about time we went. So I'll ask my dad for a horse and carriage. There's no need for that, said Peter, popping the acorn in his mouth. And off they start. And the whole band follows. And they get a little bit down the road. And she says, I don't even know your name. Peter, he says. And with that, the acorn pops out of his mouth and falls in the road. And the devil, who's had his time now, comes up and grabs that acorn. Your luck is out, he said. And instantly everyone turns back into their old clothes, and the king, who's been watching, sends his guards out there. And the girl starts crying. Why are you crying? Said Peter. Is it because I'm a scruffy little urban? He said, no. She said, I've fallen in love with you. And I don't want to go back. So he turns to the palace guard and he said, look, we're legally married. She don't want to go back with you. And the captain of guard said, do you want to go back? Do you want to go or not? No, she said. Well, there's nothing I could do, said the palace guard. And they went back. And as for Peter, he became a really good charcoal burner. And they lived happily and well and fairly well minted for the rest of their lives.
Well done, John. Thank you very much. That's lovely.
You know, when you start to tell one story and you realise you're telling a completely different story,
Yeah.
but that's okay. I realised quite early, so I was able to hold on to it.
Yeah, that's all right. Right. We've got a dog coming in and out of our house at the moment, just at the moment. He happens to live here as well. So, David, tell us a bit about yourself. We're looking for stories between sort of 8 minutes to 10 minutes or so. Sure. But all I know is that you come from Exeter. So
that's right. Well, I'm a storyteller, and every Monday morning I'm telling stories for the Hands Up Project at 8 o'clock in the morning UK time, which is a charity where I'm telling stories to kids in Gaza and all around the world. And at the moment, every Monday morning, I'm doing a thing called Teach Us a Tale. So I meet a different person each week. Tomorrow morning, I'm meeting a teenage student from Gaza, a girl called Adji, and she's going to teach me a story along with her teacher, Hend. But 2 weeks ago, I was with another woman, a teacher from Gaza in Palestine, called Heba Hamouda. And Heba Hamouda, I know her because she came to the course that I was running online about storytelling and teaching. So Heba told me this story, and I thought, well, we're talking about some nasty characters and some evil characters, the devil, etc. This one's a bit more evil, let's say, and it seems to be a suitable story to tell in October. So here's the story I learned from Heba Hamouda. Kanya Makan Fikadim as a man. Long, long ago there was not a young man who had grown up with a good mother. She had brought him up well to know the right from the wrong. But she said to her son on her deathbed, my boy, you need to go and find your way in the world. But whatever you do not walk with evil. Well, when she was dead and she was buried, the young man set off across the desert, making his way in the world. And after a long time journeying, he came across a man lying beside the path, and next to him was a camel. It was clear that the man had fallen from his camel, and the man was holding his leg. My leg is broken. Well, the young man, being good, he bound that man's leg and helped him back onto the camel. Will you walk with me? Said the man on the camel. I will, said the young man, but who are you? And where are you going? I am a man with evil intentions. Well, the young man had forgotten the advice he had learned from his mother, and he walked alongside this man on the back of his camel, and deeper into the desert they came, and it was dry and it was hot, and between them they had nothing to drink. After a long time walking in the burning sunshine, they came to a hole in the ground, a deep well, just like a fissure in the ground. They could not see the bottom. And the man on the camel back, the evil man, said, I will climb down to fetch water. No, said the young man, you have a damaged leg. I will climb down. Good. And the man with evil intentions, he took a rope and he tied it round his camel, and he said, climb down and take this empty water skin. And the young man took that rope and he clambered down to the bottom. And he filled the water skin from the little water at the bottom of the well in the desert. And from the top, the man called, tie the water skin to the rope, and I'll pull you up afterwards. So he did, and he pulled up the water to the top of the well, And then he laughed. "Send down the rope." But already that evil man rode away on his camel, leaving the poor young man alone and stranded at the bottom of the well. There was no path, no road. Who would ever find him? He had water to drink, just a little at the bottom of the well, but there was nothing else to sustain him, no food. And these were desperate times. A long time he waited. The night passed and the day came and another night passed. And after 3 days of hunger, he heard a strange cawing sound. Ah! And he saw in the crack of the sky that he could see 2 crows flying in circles, coming closer and closer. And those 2 great black crows perched at the edge of the well above. And he listened and heard the crows greet each other, and strangely the young man could hear and understand every word they spoke. "Greetings," said one crow to the other. "What evil deed have you done since we last met a moon ago?" And the other crow spoke. "Evil I have done, great evil. Have you heard about the daughter of the sheikh? She has been cursed. She has lost her mind, is raving, and it is because of me. She will not marry anyone, and no one would marry her. She is mad. Her father, the sheikh, is desperate. None will do business with him until the curse is broken." Ah, good curse, said the other crow. "And how would the curse be broken?" "Only you I will tell," said the crow. "To break the curse, one must take a glass of water and speak the holy verses over it. And when the water is drunk, then the curse will be broken. And you, my friend, in deed and evil, what have you done since the last moon was full?" And the other crow now spoke and said, "Worse than you. There was a village of water, a village of fountains, where came people to drink in the middle of the desert, a green oasis. But no more water flows there. It is a place of barrenness, drought and thirst. The people are dying. How have you done this?" "I blocked up the central well with stones, but none know how to release it. But there, if you go to that well deep down, you will find the stones." "Ha ha ha! Evil indeed," said the other crow. And now the 2 crows flew away, saying, "We will meet again when another full moon has come." Well, now it was dark, and the young man wondered. What could he do to save the sheikh's daughter? What could he do to rescue the people? There was no hope. And that darkness passed, and the sun rose the next day. And strange to say, he heard voices. Travelers across the desert were coming, and they stood above that great fissure, and one said, "Send down a rope, and we will climb down to fetch water from the bottom. Here is a well." Well, the young man at the bottom couldn't speak. He was so tired, exhausted, hungry, desperate. But when that friendly fellow climbed down that rope, he found him there at the bottom. He pulled on the rope. "Pull up this young man." And there at the top, he was revived with dates and coffee. And when he told his story, they were amazed. "I must leave you," said the young man. "Thank you for saving me. Which way to the house of the sheikh?" And they knew, and they directed him, and he hurried in that direction, and reaching the great house of the sheikh who ruled over that part of the land, well, he saw a young woman, and she raved, and she tore at her hair. And he said to the sheikh, "Is this your daughter?" "My daughter is lost to me. She has lost her mind and speaks no more sense. I know how to cure her, and then you will be able to find her a husband." "How can you do this?" "Bring me a glass of water." So the young man, he took that glass of water, and over it he spoke the holy verses. And then He gave the water, and she seemed to calm, and she sipped and she drank, and when it was finished, she looked clear-sighted at him and at her father. "It is well," said the sheikh. "My daughter is cured. The curse is broken. You, young man, who are you?" "My daughter, would you take this young man to be your husband?" "I cannot marry your daughter. I have nothing." "You will marry my daughter. You have broken the spell. Look at my sane and beautiful daughter." And she smiled, and she wanted to marry him, but he said, "Before the wedding, I have another task to complete. Have you heard of the village where there was once water, where there is now drought?" "I have," said the sheikh, and he pointed him in that direction, and the young man hurried. He was lent a horse by the sheikh, and he rode there swiftly. And on his arrival, he found the people were desperate. The creatures, the livestock were already lying emaciated. Some were dead, just skin and bones. And the people asked him if he had water that he had brought. But he rode straight past them to the central well, and there he climbed down into that dry bone well, and he reached into the bottom of the well where there were stones, and he reached and he picked those stones from the bottom of the well, and suddenly there was a great gushing of water, and the water sprung up, filling the well, and the water ran down the water courses, and the people again were revived. And soon, well, the people were running to him. "You have saved our village. You have brought water again. This is a village of water. See how everything is greening up." And the animals that were emaciated, they were brought to drink, and they were given food. Well, the young man said, "Thank you. We will reward you. I will return," said the young man, "but I must now go back for my wedding." But as he returned across the desert on his horse, he saw in the distance a man riding on a camel, and he knew who it was. This was the one with evil intention. And he stopped on his horse, and he said, "Do you know me?" "I remember you. I left you for dead at the bottom of the well, and now you are here." The young man told him all that had happened. "And now I am to marry the daughter of the sheikh." "You've told me all this, and now I know more than I did before. You have received so much. Why should I not?" And the man with evil intention, when the young man had ridden away, he set off back to that dry fissure, and he came to the well, and he put down a rope tied to his camel, and he hid at the bottom, and he knew that a month had passed and the full moon would come. And as the full moon rose, the two crows appeared, and they circled down lower and perched at the top of the well. And that man with evil intentions heard the two crows talking. "Ah," said one crow to the other, "the sheikh's daughter, the curse was broken. She is well and soon to be wed." "Ah," said the other crow, "and I, who put death and drought to that village. Now the water has appeared again, and the water flows, and there's abundance." And the man at the bottom of the well waited and listened, but the two crows said, "How were these curses broken? Last month when we met at full moon, there must have been someone strange hiding in the bottom of the well. Perhaps he is here again." And the crows looked with their beady eyes down the bottom of the well. And although the stranger tried to hide, they knew he was there. And they scratched at the rocks and the rubble, and they flapped their evil wings, and slowly more and more rubble descended into the well, covering that stranger, that man with evil intentions. The whole fissure collapsed down inside itself, until you would never have known there'd ever been a well. And meanwhile, the young man was wed to the sheikh's wife, and his goodness and wisdom were celebrated, both in his own town with the sheikh's daughter, and also across the desert in the village of fountains and plenty. This story I learned from Heba Hamouda. Thank you very much, Heba, and thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a really good story, well told. And thank you very much. And when you come across that, how old is Heather Hamouda?
Oh, Heba is a teacher. So Heba's a mature teacher.
Will you tell her
But,
she's
I
made
know
2
her
old
well.
men and 2 very young ladies? I can see Kate and Kath here. Very,
Can I
very
just-
happy to hear that, Tori.
Can I just say that I think I'm right, John, aren't I? I'm saying that I'm going to be helping out with one of the world storytelling rounds in a couple of weeks' time, and Heather is one of the teachers that are going to be telling at that event, along with a number of other teachers from around the world. So I'm looking forward to hosting that.
Tell her about this in a fortnight's time, which I think is the 1st of November at 6 o'clock. Get her to come along. I'd love to listen to her stories. I really would. You know the bit in the story there where you've got the water and you're telling the holy verses over the top of it?
Yes.
Do you know how to make holy water?
Oh, tell me.
Well, you boil the devil out of it. Okay. That's an old gypsy one, that is. So if you would be kind enough to mute yourself again, and we'll go to Jody, who's going to unmute himself, I hope. That's it.
Yeah. Hello.
Right, Jody, tell us a bit about yourself before you get started.
Hello, my name's Jody Lee. I'm known as the Skinny Poet, and I don't actually have stories. I was kindly invited by John to maybe share a poem or 2.
Yeah.
I'm in recovery. I normally do a lot of poems based around recovery and addiction. I try and perform events to raise awareness about that sort of thing and mental health issues. But I also write a lot of other poems about other things, which I'd like to share with you now.
Right, John. So the average time is about 8 to 10 minutes or so.
Yeah.
So, okay. I see you. I see underneath you're Jody the Skinny Poet, right? Now, in Shropshire, there's a saying. It says, "A poet." Do you know what you call a poet without a partner?
I don't know.
Cold and hungry.
Well, I've got a partner, and
I have to agree there. Sorry, I'm interrupting, but I definitely have to agree.
Anyway, so we're gonna. Are you reading or performing?
Performing.
So that's great. It's a pleasure to have you here. It really is. Yeah.
I may have to. I do have it down in front of me because there are a couple that I haven't performed for a little while, but I think I'll be all right. I want to do a poem. I want to try and stick to storytelling as much as possible and stick with a bit of narrative in them. And I've got a poem here about gossiping. I love storytelling. I love it, but forms of communication, language, storytelling pretty much led me to poetry. My love of constructing English and assembling it. Beautiful. And I think the immediacy of poetry appealed to the addict in me as well somehow, which is quite good for me. This poem about gossips, I kind of think of gossiping to storytelling, what sarcasm is to humor, I suppose. It's kind of the lower form of storytelling. So I'd like to do a poem about it. I think a lot of people get affected by it. It goes like this. It's called Malignant Messengers. We know them all, eyes quick and a darty, talking so tall whilst you're not a party. Did you hear? Oh dear, didn't he? Dear me. And what can you say when you're miles away? They knitter and natter a terrible chatter with never a flattering word to be heard. They meet and they speak every week. It's like Heat magazine. They don't see that they sound so absurd. Did you hear about him with that girl? Quite the whirlwind of sins. It's a sea of hot gossip out there. And oh, did you hear about her with that man? Quite the stir. And the people they hurt, it's like they just don't care. See, you're hot gossip, don't you know? You're the real life living show. You're the talk about the town amongst all mouths. And it doesn't matter where you go. I know they always want to know everything that's going down about their town. But just imagine, if you will, a place where wagging tongues are still, where the thrill of spilling others' lives from lips does not exist. What a strange world that would be, where the sheep no longer bleat, where you don't hear from Mrs. Johnson that Mr. Smith is always, or where Susie can be a floozy without it being local news. We could stand on our post office queues without the, is that really true? See Miss Baggin, quite the dragon, always falling off her wagon, but she's quick to talk of others when she's had more than a flagon. It's a simple village life. They've no sense of wrong or right. It's book club every Tuesday night where rumours fly. And they are worse down at the church, giving birth to words absurd. Poor Fred wasn't even out his hearse before they lied. Well, he had been being unfaithful, and we all know God is wrathful. He partook in slap and tickle with that tart behind the bar. It's his wife I feel sorry. All those pills she takes, I worry. It's like a scene from Corrie, but you know, without the stars. I heard he died while he was with her. What, the barmaid? No, her sister, while they played at Naked Twister. You wouldn't think a man his age could bend that far. Well, I'd heard that he was faithful and he died at the kitchen table. Oh, Mabel, talk like that round here won't get you far. See, these people who like talking, well, they ought to put a cork in because their rumour mill's polluting all our ears. Not just the fact it's not their business, but their lips will get down blisters. They've kept lipsil in the money all these years. But I don't think that they can help it. When there's news, they just can't shelf it. They'd be twitching with withdrawals before too long. And when they grind the rumour pulpits, it's lies so large you have to gulp it. They're wrapped in others' lives as if they are sarongs. But that's the truth of every village where once people just raped and pillaged. Now they spout out verbal sewage from their mouths. But don't think this does not cause damage, for if through all the lies you rummage, you'll find a truth or two. Of that I have no doubt. You see, the thing is, folk aren't perfect, and there are some who may deserve it, but there are those who just get caught in life's melee. And during all this verbal skirmish, would you really say it's worth it if your sword tongue cut limbs off a family tree? See, it's a truth you can't deny. We all mess up sometimes in life, but the gossip of mishaps lasts far too long. So next time you hear a rumour, be the scalpel, not the tumour, and think before you pass that news along. Thank you very much. I reckon I got another quick one if there's time.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, please do another one. Yeah.
Okay, right. I've got two to choose from actually. One about getting older or one about Mother Nature, if anyone has a preference.
Getting older. Me and John like getting older.
Yeah, getting older.
Right, I'll do that. I haven't done this one for a while.
You've got one about getting younger?
Yeah.
No, I haven't figured that out yet, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I wrote this when I had a daughter because nothing teaches you when you have a kid that you're not cool anymore, basically. Nothing teaches you that more than when you have a kid. So yeah, I wrote this called Relatively Cool. It's one of my favourite ones to perform. I haven't done it for a little while, so I'm going to put a prompt there. But yeah, this is Relatively Cool. It goes like this. Come take my hand. Let's go where the cool kids hang. Under motorway flyovers by vast concrete spans, we can trend like a flower in desolate lands. Come where the noise serves to steady the mind of anarchic young people who scribble through life. We can dance through the night. Oh, won't that be a sight? We can stick with the cool kids. They'll say we're all right. We can drink from the bottle and screw up our face. We may love the effects, but we can't stand the taste. And this place will feel mythic as we'll only attend when the day's polished leaves and the night smudge descends. We can kick off our shoes and grubby our feet and kick dust up by dancing to songs on repeat. And we won't know the band and we won't know the song, but the cool kids, they love them and they're never wrong. We can smoke cigarettes, talk of current affairs, which they know nothing about, but they're cool, they don't care. They can school us in fashion, what's hot and what's hip, and say, you'd look totes amazed with a hoop in your lip. Then we'll gather dry wood and light up a fire, quietly soaking up warmth as we start to get tired. But the cool kids don't care. They've got braids and tattoos. They've got bracelets and badges and all wear brand new shoes. Their clothes are all skin tight and they smile with ease. They've got porcelain skin that their life's not yet creased. Aren't you glad that I brought you? Glad you come along? What? Sorry? Well, what do you mean you want to go home? Well, I know they're not the brightest. I know they're really young, but they're the cool kids. Come on, they know how to have fun. Look at them now, arm in arm, full of laughter. Well, yeah, I know they're the before and we're the after, but I want to learn about text talk. What's YOLO and memes? I want to go back to a time before life killed my dreams. I don't want to grow old, feel the cold in my bones. I want to be dangerous and reckless. Don't want to go home. I want to make new regrets, go crazy, berserk. Well, at least until Sunday before I go back to work. See, the cool kids, they get it. They're careless and free. They're tequila and Jaeger bombs, not coffee and tea. They're parties and free love and all the fun things. When you sip from their Red Bull, you really grow wings. They sing and they dance. They take chances in life. They're the accelerant when the fire ignites. They light up the dark like fireworks by the moon. When you're out with the cool kids, the sun comes too soon. And still even then, they look flawless in dawn, look like shimmering angels while we look like hellspawn. Look, the truth is, their youth is contagious and fun. I want to drink from their fountain, be forever young. And there it is. It hits me like an epiphanal slap. I don't want to grow old because I suppose I feel trapped. I feel tired and burdened, a warm version of death. I feel like a balloon that's vacuumed of its breath. I feel broken and battered and chewed up and spat out. The cool kids cleanse my goal of its spiritual gout. In their presence, their essence transfers onto me. And I don't care if it's sad. For tonight, I'm trendy. Look, I know it's not real. I'm not cool anymore. But the cool kids don't know that. So let's just stay till we're bored. Thank you very much.
That's absolutely excellent, and thank you very much. Really well done, well done.
Brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Right, now, has everybody performed or done something that wants to do something? Does anybody want to have a go that hasn't had a go or anything? Right, so I'm going to call it there. We've been going about an hour. Now, what we normally do at my storytelling...
Mike, I think Kate Gold just put her hand up.
Did she?
Yeah.
Kate, did you put your hand up, Kate?
I did put my hand up.
Sorry, I missed you. I
No,
do
that's
apologise.
okay.
So tell us where you're from.
I live on the edge of the North Moors, or Dartmoor,
Dartmoor.
near Chadford.
Okay. You're from
Um,
Devon this time, almost. Where did you live, Jodie?
I am in Mildenhall in Suffolk, near Bury St Edmunds.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, going back to you, Kate. So you're on Dartmoor itself, or you're just on the edge of it?
Well, it's about 1.5 miles up the road, the edge of the North Moor.
Oh, right. Okay, fair enough. And so you're a poet, storyteller?
Poet.
If you're famous, I do apologise. I'm
No.
I'm only human. Okay.
I'm not famous.
Right. So what
Only
you going to do?
occasionally on my Facebook page.
Well, I'm famous in my own lunchtime, so I wouldn't worry about that. And I don't have lunches that often. So you're going to do some poems for us?
I'd like to do a poem. I will have to read it because I haven't memorized it, if that's okay.
Right. No, we have an old saying that when we started the club up 30 years ago, and it's not quite true because Jodie's just going to tell me a liar, that storytellers tell stories, but poets sometimes read their stuff. And that's absolutely fine. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
all you got to do is get started.
yeah. There we go. Got to go to the top. Right. Okay. This one, it's called A Different Day. Stop what you're doing. Put that device down, that newspaper, that book. Stop that habitual litany of discontent at your partner, your children, politics. Place your cup onto the table and leave your daily bread uneaten. Come with me. Yes, in your slippers and your dressing gown. Follow me out along this path deep into the forest. What do you mean there wasn't a forest here yesterday? It was definitely here, mist hidden, intangible, but yesterday you were still sleeping. Don't complain about the brambles and the damp. This is how many adventures begin, with much mud and some confusion. Nearly there, across this brook and past a stand of silver birch full of small birds, to the grove of benevolent oaks. Here we are. Here is the storyteller's fire. Find your place, for early as it is, many are arriving, some bemused and shyly smiling, swathing themselves in shawls and blankets, sharing benches and log seats with strangers. Some are still grumbling, disgruntled and sour. The restless fidgeting stills, the whispers cease. The storyteller is come. The story carrier, the bringer of tales, She will take you further on the path than you have ever dared to travel, to the tundra, to the desert, the darkest forest, to the furthest edges of dangerous places. There may be giants, wee folk, talking animals, royalty and pauper. She takes you to find both the wild and the tame, the wolf, the raven, and the milk-giving cow. The hag queen cackles her way onto the stage, wearing a dress of human skins, her tusks gleaming in the firelight. Both the noble and the foolish inhabit these realms of myth and magic. The 12-tined stag entices you deeper, further. The hawk is circling above. The seeker falls asleep by an enchanted pool and wakes with no name. The journey of a day becomes 7 years. The innocent are often slain and revived with the power of love and longing. The story finds its place in you, holding up its mirrors. You are revealed and wide awake, tearful and jubilant in turns as you find your way home. Stumbling back to your creaking door, you are shivering. Your clothing is torn and you cannot begin to count your scars. Your mouth is full of moss and blood. Your eyes are full of celestial light and shadows. Your heart is full of fire and vision, and nothing is the same. But there is your cup, still steaming on the table. The fridge still rattles and hums. Your loved ones are eating their porridge and toast. But wait, is that the glint of a polished tusk reflected in the eye of an owl in the corner? And surely it was a trick of the morning light that caused the kitchen clock to wink. Voila.
That was lovely, Kath. Thank you very much. You going to do another one, or?
No.
Well, how about coming next month in 2 weeks' time and doing another one for us?
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah. No, it'd be a pleasure to have you back. Okay.
Thanks.
Right. So how we normally do it at the club is we now have parish notices. So if anybody wants to say that where they're performing in the next moment, or they can advertise any of their gigs, I know there's not many gigs going around at the moment. And I think the only parish notice I've got is that we had the Harvest Festival outside of our church this morning. And that's about it. So is anybody else, they've got a gig that they want to advertise that's online or not online or whatever, now's your chance. David first, Kate next, Kath next.
Yeah, if anybody's interested, I'm running courses called Creative and Engaging Storytelling for Teachers. And I've got a course next weekend, an intensive, and then a course starting the following weekend, the 31st of October, which is a part-time course over 6 weeks. So just check out my website, I guess, David Heathfield.
Right, so David Heathfield's website, David Heathfield, a very good storyteller. Is that how it goes?
Something like that.
Right. Kath.
Thanks, Mike. Lichfield Storytellers on Monday the 9th of November. We have the wonderful Shona Lee. If you don't know her, she's amazing. She's the last Drutzilla, amazing Jewish storyteller, and she's doing a very unusual evening for us. It's an evening of requests. So if you've got a favourite story that maybe you heard Shona Lee tell years ago and you'd like to hear it again, or maybe you heard it recently and you want to hear it again, you can send us a request. So we are Lichfield Storytellers, and if you look for Lichfield Storytellers on Facebook, or you just Google Lichfield Storytellers, you'll find our website, and there are links for tickets, and you can contact us to ask for stories. And do you know what, Mike?
This is online, isn't it?
Sorry?
This is online.
Yeah, it's online. Yeah. Do you know what, Mike? I've forgotten when the next Get a Word in Edgeways is. It's round
It's the 8th of November, isn't it? So.
Is it the 8th? That's right.
Yeah, we've got one of these first, so I wasn't going to mention it till then. We do Get a Word Online, which is a concert. So.
I don't think it's the 8th because the 8th is a Sunday. That's the next creative practice.
Oh, is it? Right.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to mention it because there's another one of these first. Before.
Oh, okay.
So that's what I was going to say. But the Get a Word in Edgeways is our festival, where we just want you to come and sit in a field in Shropshire when we can do that again and sit around bonfires and do all that kind of thing. Jodie, were you wanting to say something? Just everybody, just unmute yourself for a second. Oh, you've all gone. Right. So what we do at the club normally.
Can I?
Go on.
Can I just put a couple of parish notices out, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely, John.
Yeah, on this site tomorrow on the World Storytelling Cafe, we got part 2 of African storytelling, what Yusuf Jaffa, Soda Story, hopefully Anu Madika, which would be great. And next Sunday, well, because what's happening is alternate Sundays, I'm putting on a featured teller and then a couple of sort of small bits with it. And next Sunday we've got Liz Manuel, who's born in Puerto Rico, lives in New Mexico. But before her, we've got a couple of plays live from children in Gaza. Thank you, David, for putting me in charge with.
Fantastic. When's that happening?
Next Sunday at this time. And then we hope to all see you back here the Sunday after.
It's going to be amazing. This is part of the project that I'm involved in. It's kids in Gaza and who've written their own plays and performed them as part of a competition over the last year or two. And then some of those will be doing live performances. That's going to be fantastic. Yeah.
Right. So what I was going to say. Yeah. So what I was going to say was we're just going to leave the Zoom meeting open for 10 to 20 minutes. I'm going to go and get a beer. We've all been sat still. And then if anybody just wants to chat, and I would certainly love to hear more about what you're doing with kids in the Gaza Strip. I really would. So we'll just have a break for a couple of minutes and everybody can have a loo break and fill your glasses back up again. And then I think the main part of our club is this. Normally we'd have some food. It's a bit like a darts team, is what I said to the pub. When you finish, they turn up with chips and all sorts of things. And we just sit down and we have a social sort of 20 minutes, half an hour, however long it takes. It's me and Kenny Pugh. We're in the pub for now, having a beer. So that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the loo. I'm going to get a beer and I'm going to come back. So
I'm going to have to go, I'm afraid, folks. I'm going to love you and leave you. And I hope to see you all back here in a fortnight.
Nice to see you, Cass.
Nice to see you, Cass.
I'm afraid I have to go.
Is it next Wednesday, Shonali?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. And I actually think Shonali's wrong, Kath, because I think she ought to call herself the first Drusilla because she's the first of the 21st century, not the last one.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Tell her that. Bye, everybody. Sorry that I've got to go.
It's okay.
Bye, Catherine. Thank you for the story. Thank
You're
you for
welcome.
the story today. And also thank you for the story of the enchanted canoe.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. It's a beauty, isn't it? Bye, then.
Bye.
Oh.
John, who was in charge of... Oh, Jodie's still there. I thought he'd moved.
Who
Who was in charge of letting people in tonight? Because I had to watch it all on Facebook to start off.
Well, it was Julio at the beginning, and then it changed over to Ali. Yeah. So,
That'll be why then, because I found it on Facebook and then had to come and set the computer up.
you pressed the gold button and it didn't work, did it? At first.
No, it just kept me on trying to get into Zoom for ages, so I had to watch most of Kath's on Facebook and yours.
Happens on occasions.
John?
Jodie,
Yeah.
you're fabulous.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Hi,
much.
David. Yeah.
John, I want to ask you about the World Storytelling Round that we're doing in November.
The 8th one.
8th of November.
That's the one you're sending in films.
Yeah. Well, I've got well over an hour's worth of stories already, and I'm just wondering. I mean, I think I've got as many as I'm going to get probably.
Well,
is Is that okay?
We'll just make it that night. That's what's happening on the 8th. Is your hour of film, so it's not a problem.
Yeah, and then,
that's an alternate week, you see. So it's not.
Yeah,
it doesn't cut in. It's not an open.
Right. Okay.
It's not like I intentionally put you. I might. There's someone else who I might give a short bit to before that starts, and then we'll go to you. It'll be an hour and a half program. That's all right. That'd be brilliant.
Yeah, but I haven't timed it exactly. It might already be about an hour and a half. I don't know.
Then it's as long as it takes. It's a piece of string. Okay. It's not a problem.
Okay, and then I'll do the links between the things live. Yeah, is that right?
Yeah. If you want. Yeah.
So if I just send the running order and the to you to
that works. That works.
Yeah, brilliant.
So you work with a school in the Gaza Strip, or a single school, or a group of people?
There's another man called Nick Bilborough, and it's his project. He runs the Hands Up project. I'm one of many storytelling and teaching volunteers in the project. It's an amazing thing. I've been involved in it for years, and it's not just one school. It's available to teachers throughout the Gaza Strip and Palestine, and also works with refugee children from Syria in, for example, Jordan. But most of it is with kids in the Gaza Strip. And normally when there isn't lockdown, because the schools are going back this week after lockdown in Gaza. Right. But normally we would, a person like me might be linked up with one teacher in one school and meet them once a week for a lesson, where it's kind of a creative lesson where they have a chance to meet somebody from outside. But there's all sorts of different kinds of sessions go on. Because I'm a storyteller, my sessions are always about storytelling. But there's storytelling going on every day through the Hands Up project. Lots of other storytellers involved, like Rebecca Lemaire and Cassandra Y, and Nick Bilborough himself is a storyteller. And then
Cassandra Y.
Yeah, she's And then there's lots of other. What's Kate? Oh, I'm trying to remember her name. Very well-known storyteller who lives in Sweden. Oh, doesn't matter. British woman. Can't think of her name right now. Catrice Horsley.
Catrice Horsley?
Yeah, she's involved.
Oh, I haven't heard. Is that where she went? Well, yeah. I've known Catrice for ages. I wonder where she'd gone to. Yeah, she's in Sweden, is she? Yeah.
I don't think she's doing any at the moment. She might be, but she's done lots of sessions for the Hands Up project as well. Yeah.
I've got a great bunch. I've got Nick coming on talking about the Hands Up project for one of the Monday night programs. Right. And he'll probably have some teachers on talking with him as well.
Fantastic.
He might rope you in. I can't remember the date of that one. I know I had a long talk with Nick, and I made notes, and I've got to find the piece of paper I made the notes on.
Yeah, I have.
It's amazing what he's inspired in. It's quite an extraordinary feat that he's accomplished, because it's given children in Gaza a chance to communicate with kids all around the world. I mean, he's linked up kids in Gaza with kids from Peru to China, all over the place. It's fantastic.
It sounds really good. The thing about Zoom, I'm finding, because this is the first time I've done this as well, we'd be having a social, and it's very interesting, but Jodie and Kate would be talking about poetry in the other side of the room, because you can, when it's live, you can actually have to have two conversations going at once, can't you? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, of course. You can do it in breakout rooms. Anyway, I have to go anyway, but it's great.
No, it's been really interesting. I hope do come in a fortnight's time.
I'll do my best. All right. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Cheers.
David. Bye.
So, Jodie and Kate, do you go to poetry, Zoom? Do you have Zooming poetry evenings and stuff?
I do, yeah. The last one I done was actually on Google Meet. So they're being spread out somewhat haphazardly across all the forums that are going at the minute. I think people are really trying to find their feet with all this happening. People are setting up all sorts of different things, but Zoom does seem to be the most popular.
I didn't know what a Zoom meeting was before Christmas.
Neither did I. No.
Okay. I know what going to the pub and talking and telling a few stories and having a few poems and stuff was. Zoom meeting and Google Team meetings and something else someone can have never heard of it. It's Hangouts or something. I think it sounded like a bus stop when I was a kid, and you drank cider and you hang out with people. Do you remember doing that, Kate? Did you live in Dartmoor when you were a kid? Because we used to sit in bus stops and drink cider, I tell you.
No, I used to do that in the Abbey churchyard in Bath.
Oh, okay.
For Andy's benefit, Andy, who's just joined us at the bottom there.
Andy's come in.
Yeah. But tell him we've had stories and poems, and we're having a bit of a chat now. So.
No, Andy's one of the team that helps run Get a Word in Edgeways.
Hello, Andy.
Hello. We've just finished, Andy. We're just having a chat and a beer.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm afraid I was otherwise unable to get to you before, but yeah, nice to say hello anyway.
Yeah, and lovely for you to come. And we've had a lovely hour or so. We started at 6. We finished just after 7. We had some poems and some stories and stuff. And we're just having the beer like we do at Tales at the Edge when we're all finished.
Excellent. I just saw Kate there a minute ago.
Yeah, Kate. Yeah, Kath Edwards was here. That's brilliant. Yeah. Anyway, Kate. So
Yes.
Do you go to poetry Zooming evenings and stuff?
No, I don't. I did start going to real ones last autumn, because that was my first autumn since I moved here. But I haven't really connected with other poets on Zoom. I haven't really looked, to be honest. Maybe
Was
I
this
should.
Was this your first reading on Zoom or performing?
In a group like this, yes.
So before you did tonight, you were a virgin Zoomer.
Oh, I've done Zoom before, but not with poetry.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I've been in Zoom meetings and things.
Yeah, I think we all bloody have, haven't we? Yeah.
Jody, you're a veteran, aren't you? You're a Zoom veteran.
Yeah, it's been a very, very busy time on Zoom. Certainly, I'm doing a college course as well, which is a lot of that's been moved to Zoom and Teams. We do it on Microsoft Teams as well, a lot of that.
So what's the course in?
Access to counselling. So I'm doing a counselling course, a diploma in counselling, hopefully to go on and do a degree.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's very important. That's very important work at the moment, to be fair.
It is, yeah. And they seem to think in a few years, given with everything that's going on, that it will be more important than ever. Yeah. And a lot of it is currently moving online as well. A lot of counsellors are having to go online. So the fact we're doing our training online kind of works quite well for that anyway.
So Steph and I want to know what do you counsel alcoholics?
Well, like I said, I'm in recovery myself.
Alcoholic, manic depressive,
alcoholics. Yeah.
Well, I'm in a very good position to do that, being in recovery myself. So yeah, I haven't had a drink for about 2 years because it started getting the better of me. So
I always quote Winston Churchill. I've taken more out of alcohol and alcohol's taken out of me.
As long as you're on the winning side, I think it's okay, you know.
Well, I do get that, yeah.
And Jodie's being my assistant next in about a week and a half's time on a course I'm running. But
right, okay.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a whole new experience for me doing that. So I'm normally on the receiving end of workshops. I'm in there.
Oh, I didn't know Jodie was the person you were talking about. Brilliant choice.
Yeah, I was gossiping about him.
No, it was just at home chat.
There's a pillow talk, I think, mate. That's what it was.
Oh, great.
Yeah. I know when we do the Get a Word Online concerts, which are the second Thursday of the month, Amy Douglas does them for us. And she's got to have a team behind her. We worked out after the first one when she just went about bonkers, but she managed to pull it off. We need 2 or 3 people around. And when we added paying tickets, because we charge £5 a ticket now, we have to have someone to check, because there's always someone who pays for the ticket, who comes in, hasn't got the link, hasn't got the email, and then starts phoning Amy up and shouting down the phone, saying, I can't get in, and stuff like that. So we've worked out, it took us 4 because we were all absolute beginners or virgins about doing all this. It took us 4 really to iron it out and to work it all out. It works. The last one, we're extremely happy with it. Worked really well, and we've got backup, and we've got Tim doing the tickets, and it's just a new world, isn't it? It really is just, well, it is for me anyway, mate. So.
Learning on the fly with this, I think. There really has been a lot of people learning on the fly who have
tried to... That's my life.
Yeah. Well, it's the best way to learn sometimes, I think. Just in at the deep end and swing your way out of it.
Yeah. I tell you what, Jody, you've got to remember that you're talking to the generation that learned to drive on Austin Allegros. So if you can learn to drive on one of them, you are so pragmatic and adaptable, because things used to fall off them for starters.
British School of Motoring. I just did once a week lessons in a Mini, and then when they gave me a Vauxhall Viva for my test, I thought I was in heaven, because there were big pedals that I wasn't sort of hitting the wrong pedal because it was big.
And I had to. Some of my learning was on a Land Rover, so that had 2 gear sticks.
Yeah. Well, Stephanie drives a tractor better than she drives a car.
Yeah. So are you? Because we always have I live in the hills in Shropshire, Kate. So we've always got to have a 4x4, because it hasn't happened recently for about 2 or 3 years, but we can get snowed in. And the longest we've been snowed in for was about 3 days. But this was back in the 80s when we got proper weather. You know.
I got snowed in for a couple of days the first winter I was here. I moved here just before Christmas 2018, and in the February we had snow, which just that was it. It's all, every way out of this village is hills. So that was good fun.
It is quite a good time in lots of ways, because you are snowed in, but there is a community that suddenly arrived. It's like this COVID stuff. That as soon as you get snowed in on things like that, round by here anyway, you get an absolute community turning up. And I'm in the category now of the old Git Up the Lane. So I get young mothers turning up from on the Mad Mums run from school. And they come bumming up to check that I'm all right. And in the old days, I used to scrounge cigarettes off them, but now I've given up smoking nowadays.
Not fun. I'm going to have to go because I've got to take my daughter home in 5 minutes.
So where are you, my friend? You're at home, because you look.
I'm at home. Yeah,
You live in an art gallery, obviously. So.
Yeah, my partner is a bit of an artist, so that's some of her work. Well, not this one. This is just a tapestry, beautiful tapestry. That I thought would make a nice addition to the background. But yeah, we do have lots of art kicking about.
Yeah, no, I live with an artist as well. It's it's surprising what happens. Yeah. Anyway, so so we'll call it tonight. I really enjoyed it. This is what I've been doing for an awful lot of my time.
It was lovely.
I'll give you a bell next week, Jody.
Yeah, of course, John. Yeah, let me know. And Stephanie, I'll send some of those to John if you want them, Stephanie. But I do.
Yeah, that would be great.
Blog.
And I'll look at the blog in a minute. Great, thanks, Jody.
No worries. Yeah.
But John, you need to come home because the planters have just arrived, so you're gardening all day tomorrow.
It's time to finish, Mike.
Yes, we're going to finish. Yeah. We're just finishing now. There's a bad line, Steph. I didn't hear quite what you said there.
Bless you. Well, thank you for a lovely evening.
I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you all come back. Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Nice to see you, Andy.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Ali, for driving the bus.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Yeah, I hope you've had a good time, Andy. You've been out Iron Fort looking.
Me?
No, Andy.
No, I got a bit of Parkinson's and just went a bit. Ugh.
Oh, did you?
And then we've been in difficult conversations with what to do with our son who's in Manchester and.
Oh, gosh. Okay. It's not. I'm not in charge of this Zoom, and I have been asked to call it because Ali, who's wanting to go, who's in charge. Okay.
Thank you.
If you can make it, I'm going down the George in a minute.
No, there's stuff on. To be honest, I just wanted to pop in and say I would have been here. Really glad
lovely.
that Kate
It's lovely. I'm going to have to let Ali go, Andy. Mate, see you, mate.
Bye bye.